Hello, everybody. If you all will come in and take a seat, we are just delighted to see your smiling faces. So welcome. As you know, tonight's topic is Smart Urban Planning and Asheville with Joe Minicozzi of Urban 3. If I can get you guys to kind of settle down. Okay, great. So I have a few announcements. First, we are partners with this wonderful place with Ollie. And this is our partner right here. This is Red. And they keep us straight and they help place all the AV stuff that I have no idea. But how many of you guys attend Ollie? Oh, yeah. Okay. So, and they announce our programs in their newsletter. We also want to, it's not advancing. Oh, did he do something?
No. No, we're good. Okay.
Yep, we got it.
Got it. That work?
Is that, okay, cool.
Got it.
Thank you. We are a 3-level organization with Sierra Club. The National Sierra Club, if you join membership, you get a beautiful magazine once a month, and it tells you where you can go on international trips and lots of interesting topics. The state coming out of Raleigh has issues that they're working on. In particular, the one that strikes me is they're trying to deal with cutting down our southeastern forests. You know that Europe has this strange concept that our forests are renewable energy. So they are buying up our forests and putting them into wood chips and burning them up. And we're trying to get some kind of regulation against that, but it's private property. So that is difficult. But the one that you are involved with, thank you very much, is Western North Carolina, and I'm chair. We would like you to like us in every way you can. We have a website, wncSierraClub.org. Please sign up for our newsletter on it that's at the bottom on the right, and you would get a free e-newsletter every other Saturday telling us what the programs are, what the hikes are, what the alerts are. But we also have Facebook, we also have Instagram, and we would love to have your involvement for that. We would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on Cherokee land, and we want to thank our ancestors for keeping this land safe and beautiful. We have programs every first Wednesday of the month. 7 p.m., the one that you are a part of. But at 5 p.m., if you're interested, we have upstairs a leaders meeting, and we have a number of leaders who are here. We get together to put our heads together to think what programs, what topics, what alerts, what do we want to do for endorsements? How do we want to make the world a better place? And you are welcome. Just contact me. We have a Kids Adventure Club, and we have 3 programs coming up in June and 3 in July, if you think you might be interested. These are students with Tempe Montford and with also Dr. Grant Center. And we take these kids like with the Arboretum, they pet snakes, they stomp in creeks, they do watershed. So how many of you guys have petted a snake before? Oh, look at this. So you guys just need a little one to take your hand and go and pet another one. They're waiting for you. We have a hike coming up, and this is the Flat Laurel Creek Hike on Wednesday, June 18th. We're going to start at Highway 215. We're going to climb 1,000 feet elevation, and we're going to go to Sam's Knob and have a 360 view. So if you think that's for you, please contact this wonderful man, Ed Maggot, and here is his information. It's also on our website, WNC Sierra Club. We have some community volunteer opportunities. Riverlink is continuing its work post-Helene. They've got one June 12th, June 20th. Again, this is posted in our newsletter. There is an Asheville Extreme Weather People's Hearing, which is Wednesday, June 18th. They are looking for your stories. So if you have a little blip, a little story to give, they're looking for you. Please go to Highland Brewery, 5:30 to 7:45. Also want to tell you about the library. This is called Come Hell or High Water. They're looking for your photographs and your stories. And if you have some that you would like to have archived forever and ever, come up and get the QR code, or Ken is putting it on the table. Take the QR code and you can post your photos and you can tell your story. We're having a picnic, guys. So in July, we're actually not doing a program except a fun program. In times past, we've picnicked by the river, but guess what? The river said otherwise this time. So we are picnicking in West Asheville Gasaway Park. There is a shelter there. There are cookout grills. So bring something to put on the grill, bring a potluck dish to share. And it's from 12 to 3. We will have badminton and horseshoes. Bring your kids, bring frisbees, but bring food to share. So before I introduce Joe, I do want to say the UNCA Save the Woods, we have written a Sierra Club a letter to the Chancellor and the Board of Trustees asking them to please consider saving those 45 acres of woods. So just wanted you to know our stance on that. So to introduce Mr. Joe, he is an urban planner, the founder of Urban 3. He's going to tell you. He is an imagination man. He is thinking new ways to visualize land use, urban design, economics. In 2017, he was recognized as one of 100 most influential urbanists of all time. So, Mr. Joe.
Thanks, Judy. I'm going to go fairly quickly through a little bit of my history and then into some work. But I grew up in Rome, New York. Rome, New York. I don't know if y'all know Rome, New York. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere up there. My favorite thing about this slide, by the way, is the Chamber of Commerce ad over here that says Rome is in the middle of all of the action. So Rome doesn't even have action. You know, if you're in Albany, why not drive 2 hours to Rome? When I was a kid, they tore all of this stuff down, and somebody had the great idea to replace it with a Revolutionary War fort. So we don't have a downtown, we have a wooden fort, and occasionally we get Canadians that show up. And so this is what I grew up with. I thought this was normal. I thought it was just something you do. You just tear your buildings down. And so I moved from, if I went in college, I thought it would be a great idea to get away from the snow and go down to Miami. And I thought I'd be spending my time on a beach. And unfortunately, I chose the wrong profession. I went to architecture school. And I don't know if you know architecture school, but you're basically locked in a room for 5 years. And these are a couple of my professors who've heavily influenced me. This is Elizabeth Plater-Zyberk and Andreas Dwani. And they basically were challenging us to look at this sprawl stuff that we would lampoon in college, but it's a real place called, in this case, San Antonio. This is happening all over the urban landscape, all over the country. And they weren't the only professors of mine. There were a bunch of them that basically formed this group called the New Urbanists, challenging planners because planners were building and allowing sprawl to happen. So how is it that we have planning documents, we have comprehensive plans, we have planning meetings, we have planning staff, and sprawl keeps happening? And it's because it's happening by design. So we have this kind of apparatus called a car that we design our cities like it's some sort of prostheses device that we have to accommodate our cities to make our cars work. And I want to get into this deeper, but I want to challenge you about our suburban biases that we're all trained in. So just show of hands, who in this room has grown up in multifamily Housing. Got 2 hands. 3. Let that wash over you for a second. In the whole history of human civilization, our generation, this group in here, are living in an anomaly. This whole single family concept of how we settle the landscape has poison to it. So I would say that people don't see that because some of it is we just don't ask the right questions. So let's do a little detour from a town that destroyed its downtown to a town that didn't. We all know Asheville, beautiful mountains, bluegrass music, men dressed as nuns on tall bikes that eat fire. But this is how Asheville started. This is the original Asheville. Y'all have stood at this location 15 years after this picture was taken. This is the same spot. We really don't understand and comprehend how Asheville changed in its life. We had the second streetcar line in the entire country. Presidents came to visit. That's Teddy Roosevelt. During the 1920s, we were growing at 20% in population every single year of that decade. When people are like, oh, Asheville's growing, it's like, no, it's not. We became the second largest city in North Carolina. Did you all know that? The only city that was bigger than Asheville was Winston-Salem. In that process, we achieved the highest debt per capita of the entire United States. We were number 1 in debt. When the Depression hit and our books were audited, we thought we had $5 million in the bank. It turned out we had $18,000 in the bank. Little clerical error there. Our entire city council was indicted and the mayor committed suicide. Leadership. Kidding. This is what happened to our community, and we essentially chose to pay off that debt, and it took us until 1976. But this is, Thomas Wolfe wrote this about Asheville. Asheville has squandered fabulous sums. They flung away the earnings of a lifetime. They've mortgaged those of a generation to come. They have ruined a city, and in doing so, they've ruined themselves, their children, and their children's children. Y'all are politically active, right? Could you imagine if you said this at a city council meeting? By the way, his second book was called You Can't Go Home Again for obvious reasons. He was essentially banished from the city. He stayed in New York City, and he kept on writing about this place. So here's when we burned the last bond in 1976. There they are with, some white men, and you've got Miss Asheville with her tiara. They're burning the bond. Here's Billy Graham. He showed up. And when we got out of debt, we started doing what other cities did. We cut a highway through the north side of downtown, which became the Crosstown Expressway. And the coup de grace was when we blew the mountain open and made the Bowcatcher Cut. Incidentally, there are people that fought the cut and proved it was cheaper to do a tunnel through the mountain. And DOT's like, we don't know how to do a tunnel. And everybody was like, there is a tunnel right there on Tunnel Road. It's about 100 yards away. Anyway, we'll come back to DOT. On the other side of the cut, the mall happened, and this is downtown Asheville. So some of you may have been here in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s when we were basically flat on our face. That's a 1996 Chevy Celebrity. We had this attitude that we're not urban, we're rural mountain people. We've got these mountains, let's just spread out. Like, this is what we were. I worked for Julian Price's company. I don't know if y'all know Julian. Julian inherited a bunch of money, and he basically started a for-profit real estate development company called Public Interest Projects. 75% of the money went into sticks and bricks and 25% into business startup. Our time was the direct opposite. We spent most of our time with businesses. If you've been to the Orange Peel, the Laughing Seed, Malaprops, there's a lot of stuff that we've done downtown. But the key is Julian actually made it into the Whole Earth catalog with his City Watch. So we were doing things like this, taking this building. This is, y'all know this building. This is it after. That's Malaprops building. And we basically unskinned the building and made apartments. And one of the things that I've learned from Julian's trustee, Pat Whalen, I don't know if y'all know Pat, but Pat is a genius on how to talk about information of cities. And he found himself, and I don't know if you understand Asheville politics, but it gets kind of crazy here. We have people on the hard right and people on the hard left, and we nary have the two meet, right? But you're trying to get things done. In the world of real estate development, we're evil people because we're developers on the left. And on the right, because we're doing stuff downtown, we're somehow subsidized. So we had to find a way to speak to both sides. And we do that through data. Now, why it matters is because we're all in this experiment together. If you look up the word incorporate in the Oxford American Dictionary, it says to create a company, a city, or other organization as a legal corporation. By law, the city of Asheville is incorporated. The county of Buncombe is incorporated. The state of North Carolina is incorporated, and so is our country. Joe Biden said this on the Stephen Colbert Show, the United States is the largest corporation in the world. Did y'all know that? I was such a nerd, I looked it up. For any attorneys in the room, on the bottom right, that's the code that lists us as a federal corporation. This is how we have to operate, is our system of government. So Asheville at $14 billion of taxable value is 7 times the value of Ted Turner. Y'all know some of our counselors. Would they qualify for running a $14 billion corporation? Do we have a system where we talk about the costs and revenues of the city in an honest, transparent way where we understand this stuff? We need to challenge our elected officials to understand this because of the gravity of the power of these decisions. Ted Turner doesn't just look at Facebook to make decisions. He's looking at data. So our city, by the way, and I don't know if y'all know this, the state made it illegal for us to annex land until actually next year, 2026. So from 2010 to 2026, we can't annex land. These acres are all that we have. This is more important for the county because Buncombe County can't annex Haywood County, right? That land is finite. So if we talk, y'all get quiet. Is this too nerdy for you this evening? So if we talk to farmers, farmers are always talking in economic terms about land. So this is one of the buildings that we rehabbed. So thank you, city, for the streetscape, the garbage can, the bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree, right? So we put in retail, office, and residential above. The taxable value went from 300,000 to 11 million. So what you get in taxes by that historic preservation is 3,500% more taxes. Did y'all get that? So this is not money we're getting, this is money you get. So go out and buy 3,500% more garbage cans. This is about building community wealth. Do y'all have a 401k plan that grows by 3,500%? Wouldn't you like that? So we need to have a common language about how do we grow our community. And we got pushback when we started doing this. So this is, people would say, well, Joe, that's $11 million, this Walmart's 20 million. Okay, on face value, yeah, that Walmart's twice the value, right? But let's think about the planet. It took 34 acres of our farm called Asheville to make that Walmart happen versus 0.2 acres for our building. When you say gross real estate value, you're missing the point about productivity, right? Did y'all follow me? So if we go back to the taxes paid and just say, what's the taxes per acre? Our building's paying, what is that, 100 times more taxes per acre versus the Walmart, double the sales taxes, obviously more residential and more jobs. Did you know that the urban environment produces that kind of wealth to you? Conversely, if I'm a real estate developer, what's better for me? If I build a cheaper building, I pay you lower taxes. It makes sense for me to do the Walmart. We've greased the skids for the thing that kills the planet. Did y'all follow me? So this isn't scary math. I don't want you to think that this is really hard to get your brain around. I don't have a finance degree. I like to draw pictures. I'm trained as an architect. And so what we do is we find a way to visualize this stuff. I have my colleague Andrew back here. He knows how to do this. I don't. But back in I think it was 2011, when Asheville got called a cesspool of sin, I was on the Downtown Association board, and we showed this information. But basically, like if I can show you your brain, right? I can show you your creative thought process in green versus your brainstem activity in blue. Can I do an economic MRI of your place? So here's our county, 600 square miles. You got Mount Mitchell, and let's just go ahead and be crude about it. Mount Mitchell is non-taxable, so it's worth nothing. Pisgah is non-taxable, it's worth nothing. I've got green, so this is Big Ivy up here. You can see it's low value, and you get up here at the purple, and like the Biltmore Estate. So the Biltmore Estate is super high value. It's worth $100 million. We all know that when the Cecils show up at one of our council meetings, we all genuflect and thank them for their time, right? Very powerful. But that's, who's got a 180,000 square foot house in this room? Anybody? Anybody have a 100,000 square foot house? No, they have the biggest gas tank. We don't say miles per tank, we say miles per gallon, right? So rather than total value, here's value per acre. And let's not stop there. Here it is in 3D. So I presented this at the State of the Downtown address, and I asked our county, I asked David Gant, I said, can you tell me where downtown is? And he goes, that big purple mountain. Like, yeah, that's what's producing all the revenue for the county, right? If we're all paying the same county millage rate and you drop a blanket that's the same thickness on this model, where's it popping up? We can also see our little cousin of Black Mountain over here. You can see its little downtown popping up too. But we can also see the sprawl on the south side and how low value that is. So we have to find a way to have an honest conversation about the data that's out there and what it all means to us. So our thesis at Urban 3 is to show you the information and not just talk about it. That's the revenue side. We've also done the cost side. So Eugene, Oregon, they were talking about expanding their growth boundary. So they have a container around their city. Here's their downtown. This is their version of West Asheville, Haywood Road, and you can see it popping up. The campus of the University of Oregon is right in the center there. But we got all of the costs and sent people a bill. So this is a side view of the model. So think about like you're in a lake looking at a boat, and what's below the water line is the sunk cost. So here's the revenue that people are paying in taxes, and this is what it costs for that neighborhood to be there. So I can figure out when you all drive home, I can calculate your vehicle miles traveled. I understand the cost of that road, the cost of the pipe to get out to your house. I can send you a bill for all of that. Every lift station that you have to go through. So let's just send everybody a bill. This is the net model. So think of this. This is a $36 billion city. This is its return on investment. Does that make sense? This is its cash flow, its balance sheet. So anybody who's run a business before, you need to know the P&L, right? So this is the top view of the city. You can see what's net positive. You can see downtown. And if you lift this whole thing up like you're looking for a salamander under a rock, this is the spread of sprawl across the model. That's the cost of that subsidy. So we broke the city down. I call this the Brady Bunch slide, but basically across the top, we have residential, low density, medium density, high density, mixed use, low, medium, high, commercial, low, medium, and high. And these are the sticker prices. The average single family house is subsidized, period. And that's the subsidy in Eugene, Oregon. And of course, I got pushback because you just showed me in this test, the majority of the folks in this room live in subsidy, right? Do you want me to take your subsidy? No. But you can't have 80% of your city in subsidy and keep it alive. So we didn't tell them not to have single family housing. We said, look, you just need to understand the numbers and understand that you can't build your way out of your deficit by doing more deficit development. Does that make sense? So definitely go into your downtown. Any of these little red freckles in here, fix them. You know, that's one strategy, urban infill. But if you look up at the north side of town up here, this is a little thing called Crescent Village. It'd be, it's kind of like Cheshire in Black Mountain. It's just a little mixed use development with mostly residential, but you can see that it's net positive because of its density. It's kind of compact. So we found, 4 more areas for them to encourage that growth. So what they did, rather than expand their boundary, they focused on recycling where they're at and fixing holes that are in their budget. Does that make sense? So I'm going to be real quick with this. We did a property assessment back in 2021 of our county and how it operates. If you take all of our housing across the county and go from the poorest house on the left to the richest house on the right, break them into 10% buckets, the average property assessment screw up should be level across the system. So our county, our state has this thing called tax uniformity, that we should all be taxed equally. The way that our county operates looks like this. So what's going on in our county is we're currently overvaluing the poorest 40% of our county and undervaluing the top 60%, of which I'm part of this. So you're undercharging me for government and overcharging the poor $1 million a year and undercharging most of us $6 million a year. So what should go into the reparations fund is $7 million a year. So you all remember that Asheville Citizen Times headline where I got that big award from the county in 2021 for giving them this data? I'm joking. They actually hit our company with a $600 tax penalty, and I don't care. I paid it. This is Biltmore Forest. Anybody live in Biltmore Forest? So this is a 22-acre property on Biltmore Forest, in Biltmore Forest by the Blue Ridge Parkway with a 16,000 square foot house on it. Okay? Seriously, people, this is hiding in plain sight. Let's see what the tax value was in 2011. What does that say? $4 million. Okay, this should be about a $30 million property, but it's $4 million. In 2021, what's the value of that property? It's lost a quarter of its value. Does that happen in your neighborhood? So we did an over-under in Biltmore Forest, and about 55% of the properties are losing value. Did you all know that? For a net loss of $40 million. So I'm starting an urban renewal program for the Chads and Brads of the world. I mean, this blight needs to stop. We need to help these people. It's a joke for any of the planners in the room. Anyway, so what happened here in our community is we've undercharged Biltmore Forest 4.4 million a year, and we're overcharging Shiloh 1.5 million a year. Yeah. $4.4 million is 111 school teachers. We did this in 2021. How many times have we raised the millage rate? How many budgets have we cut? How many teacher salaries are we not paying when we have this revenue that we're just not collecting? I'm just going to put that out there. It's a form of reverse Robin Hood, and it's not just here. This is happening nationally. We've done this in lots of different places and seen it. So why should this matter to y'all? Well, first of all, you're tied into the environmental movement of the 60s, actually further back than that, but the big movements happened nationally with one of the key indices is Rachel Carson, but also the burning of the Cuyahoga River. But I want to bring you to this guy. This is Ian McCard. This is a book that came out in 1969. Notice it's got the blue orb on the back of it. And this guy was a rock star in the environmental world. He keynoted the first Earth Day presentation in Philadelphia. His opening act was Allen Ginsberg. But what's crazy about this book is it's the kind of the thesis of what becomes GIS, and I'll get into that in a second. But people see this as an environmental book, but what's crazy is the lesson he gives us over and over and over again. It's about economics. Once we start to understand the value of things, if we put the value on, if the man on the moon will know the price of a gallon of oxygen, right? If you lose this earth, how much will we pay to make oxygen happen? This is what we have to start talking about. So he was pivotal in doing this. I'm going to play this little video. This is just an opening. I got the whole video online. I can send it to you. 1969. The other thing that's kind of crazy is he comes out the door with a quote from the Bible, multiply and subdue the earth. I mean, the guy was out there, but I love this little bit.
And when there are 100 million more of us by the year 2000, will our cities be sicker still? Our suburbs just as sick? Our landscape further befouled? That's likely to be so, mate. And the reason is simple. We are a man-centered society. We have never learned that we are a part of nature. Show me any civilization that believes that reality exists only because man can perceive it, that the cosmos was erected to support man on its pinnacle, the man exclusively is divine, and then I will predict the nature of its cities and its landscape. The hot dog stands, the neon shill, the ticky-tacky houses, the sterile cord, the mined and ravaged countryside. This is the image of anthropocentric man.
This video is about 55 years old. Have we changed? Have we done anything different? So we've taken Ian to heart, and what we're doing with GIS technology is doing what he did, which is take the city and separate it into the ologies, the physical infrastructure, the buildings, but also the ologies of hydrology, geology. That's the natural side. We can break the whole world into a layer cake. And what we do as a company is we focus on separating nature and the man-made and work on the economic policy. The economics drive the shape of our communities. Money makes things happen. So it's not just me. Actually, Ian also and the Sierra Club influenced this guy, Richard Nixon, who produced this book. So this is 1973. Look at the title of this, The Cost of Sprawl. So the federal government produced a document that showed us the cost and consequences of sprawl, and we flat out ignored it since 1973. So this also spurred another movement called NEPA. Did y'all know NEPA, the NEPA Act, National Environmental Protection Act? In it are rules, actually inspired by Ian, about highways. I'm not going to go through all the details. I'm just going to go slide by slide and show you that we have it and maybe get into some highlights. But basically, we are required, our federal government, when they spend money, we all must know the direct impacts of their expenditures. So when you build a highway in my community, you need to show me all the impacts first. Those need to be done with an interdisciplinary team of people trained in the environmental design arts and planning and decision-making. Also, natural and social sciences, it's got to be integrated. Notice that it doesn't just say engineer. What our DOT has been doing to us since the 90s is they keep on showing up with a team full of engineers, and they give us what engineers know about a highway. They don't give us anything else. And it's on us to demand that they bring in an interdisciplinary team. So, it says shall discuss the relationship between that analysis and the environmental impacts, values, and amenities. Also, this is interesting. The information must be available before decisions are made and before actions are taken. The information must be of high quality and public scrutiny is essential. Okay. Ian would say over and over again that this planning of this growth is more desirable, also better for the planet, but it's also more profitable for us. We have the data that shows that. Okay, so let's go to what we need to do. Andrew ran these numbers, but this is the city, our region, and the county, and the growth since 2000. So I moved here about 2003. So I just went back to 2000. This is the city. These are all the other towns in the county, Black Mountain, Weaverville. This is the county. So here's where the county was in 2000. Here's where it is today. So what we've added, this is Black Mountain right there. We've added 3 Black Mountains, about 2.5 Black Mountains, of growth out in the county since 2000. We know what Black Mountain looks like. Why haven't we built another one? Why haven't we gone out into the county and planned for getting another Black Mountain or heck, another Weaverville, or Brevard? Brevard's only 8,000 people. So here's what we used to look like. Here's where we are now. And I wonder, like, there's Black Mountain. Like, why didn't we get one down over in Fairview or out in Inca Candler up in Leicester? Why aren't we choosing our path to encourage growth that's walkable, better for the planet, and more productive? Instead, we're just allowing development to happen without paying attention to it. I'm not going to bother explaining this. I'll make a whole PDF of this presentation and leave this for you. But in blue is the relative growth of downtown from a value standpoint versus the city versus the county. What we find with the data is that walkable stuff, and you see this if anybody lived in West Asheville or lives in West Asheville, you see it with the value of the neighborhood and how it's changed in the last 20 years. People want this type of development, but we haven't set up an apparatus to make it happen. And we need to think about that long-term development. So here's where we are. Here's where we could be. What if we had these other villages out there, and then we took that extra revenue and expanded our park system to connect all of the different parks around there? Sorry. And again, this is just a cartoon, but why not? Why don't we know, like, you can't just stop people moving here. How do we lean in and build something awesome? So just ignoring things and saying no to stuff isn't going to help this place grow and grow forward. So let's go back to this for a second. So back in 2000, the highway is kind of important. I'm going to focus the rest of the show on that because this is one of the most critical things we're working on right now in our community, and you need to take action. So the folks that fought the Bowcatcher Cut, I don't know if y'all know Betty Lawrence. Betty was part of the group that started the CCC report, and Roger Duro, Julian Price, and our community got together. And you get groups like Riverlink, you get Betty Lawrence, and then you get those hippies, SIBO. Y'all know SIBO. So we had this balanced community group from the right and the left getting together to come up with goals for the I-26 project. I just went ahead and looked at this, made a scorecard of what have we gotten from our ask in 2000, and the green is what we've gotten. We've gotten about 30%. So our DOT has ignored our community sentiment and what we've asked for this project, and one of which was separate the highway from Patton Avenue. So I was part of a group that came in about 3 years later and called the Asheville Design Center. Patty was part of this. We basically took over the American Institute of Architects, Jackie Schauer and Bill Langdon, who is the president and past president. Bill's passed away, but we took over Bill's office and started, I'm seriously not making this up. It was like being in school again. We were having night meetings. We'd get wine from the wine house and just kind of draw and come up with ideas. We were trying to find a way to make the goals of what the community wanted happen. Aesthetics matter. One of the things we were thinking about is like, why do we have such a boring bridge? This is the bridge that's currently across the river. I don't know if y'all know this, but I got this from Karen Craig Nolan. That was the original design for the Patton Avenue Bridge. Like, why didn't we do something cool? If we say we're an artistic community, if we value design, we should have well-designed things. This is a really cool bridge in Brazil that's got two bridges flying over. You don't have to be European. You could be in South Carolina and get cool bridges. This is one in Greenville or Charleston. Like, why don't we have something nice? This is one of my favorite bridges. This is in Penobscot Narrows Bridge. And at the top of this, there's a greenway that's down here. And you could pay $10 to go in the basement of this thing. And it takes you up to the top to this 4-story observatory. And you could look around for $10. Like, I went up there with my girlfriend. It was like a great date. $10. Like, how many tourists in our community would use this and see our community, and we get something cool? This is Portland, Maine, or Portland, Oregon. This is a double-decker bridge. It's called a bowstring truss. So it's like a bow, and it suspends 2 decks. They actually build bike racks that look like the bridge. This is a condo building where they're selling views of the bridge. Why don't we design something that actually adds value back to our community? And again, if you don't have to leave North Carolina, this is the Glen Cove Viaduct. Sound walls. These are Scottsdale, Arizona sound walls with a big lizard on it that's like 40 feet long. It's got these kind of tapestry and patterns that are indigenous art inspired. This is one in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Like, why do we have to have such boring stuff in North Carolina? By the way, we spent about 2,000 hours. We took in 1 year. We took all of the spaghetti of Alternative 4. Here's Earth Fair right here. So they're planning all this kind of highway all over the place. And we're like, okay, here's your new highway. We're going to squeeze it together and make a double-decker bridge. That's kind of the idea. But the key element, by the way, we lost doing an architecturally significant bridge. We had to acquiesce because DOT got mad at us in 2007 and said that it would never work. And I wish I could turn back time and make them put that in writing. But because we were all volunteers, we didn't know the process. But one of the things that we were doing was trying to make Patton Avenue livable. So these are some images that we were using back then, but let's take this kind of junk that we currently have and put in some sidewalks and maybe grow some buildings in it. Let's build a downtown West Asheville that it never really got. This is an opportunity of growth. Now, from a taxable standpoint, we go from strip mall junk to more potent buildings. So here's a shot looking over to the east and between Hillcrest and downtown. Here's what we currently have. Here's what we could have. Here's what it looks like on the ground. And here's what it could look like. So there's all these opportunities. This was a 10-year fight with DOT to get them to do this, even though we asked for it in the year 2000. But basically what was going on is by bending the highway up and making the connection and regrowing up Patton Avenue, is we get all this real estate that's currently off the tax rolls that could be on the tax rolls. We go from 0 to taxable. So as architects were drawing this, I ran the numbers. This is on the east bank and on the west bank of the river, about $700 million of development. This is 2007 when I ran the numbers. What that means to you, so in the EIS, they were supposed to write this down and show us the economic impact. If we don't get Patton Avenue back, we lose $111 million of taxes. And that should be in the document. We need to know that impact. Well, guess what? They didn't have an economist in their team. You bring an engineer isn't going to write this stuff down, right? Oh, by the way, that's about 5 times that now. So just for fun, I ran all the sorts of other economic impacts, retail sales, all of this stuff. I'm not going to go through the environmental benefit. If those folks are in those, how many units of housing? 1,600 units of housing, and they're walking or bicycling and not driving around 35,000 miles of VMT each year, that's a savings of 2,000 tons of CO2 over that 50-year life cycle. When we do this, we're stuck with it for at least 50 years. This is going to have a massive impact on not your generation, but your grandkids' generation. This is going to be a continuing, ongoing effect. So while we were working with DOT, they're like, okay, we can't do a double-decker bridge, so just put them side by side, and we acquiesced. And then they're like, let's just take your bridge and stretch it northward and stretch it southward. And then 1 month later, they come back and they're like, let's just stretch the bridge over the top of Patton Avenue. And I remember being in a farm field. I was on vacation and I called up, Alan McGuinn called me, you know Alan, and he's super nice. And I must have dropped at least 6 F-bombs on Alan that day. And I'm like, we need to have a meeting and talk about this. So we worked for a year and a half. And this is the meeting minutes, the meeting notes, and you can see that the architects released a press release. NCDOT Representative Derek Weaver confirmed that the interstate could be constructed under Patton Avenue with no additional costs of alternative 4B. Have y'all been paying attention in the paper? Why did this change? So here's what we were aspiring to. This was our vision. This is what we're getting. They're having public meetings. Y'all have like seen all this stuff, right? So just for fun, because I'm a nerd, this is the trip information from the project. So in 1980, this was their projection for the year 1995, that we would have 54,000 cars going through West Asheville on I-95. Now we can go back and get the data. Here's the actual trips that happened. Okay, so they're kind of close. In 1995, they made another projection for the year 2020, and here's actual. So when the community did the CCC report in the year 2000, check out what DOT did to reward us for our participation. They jacked the trips up to here. And they're like, okay, there's going to be that many cars in West Asheville by the year 2025. So that would be this year. Here's the actual trips. The city called bullshit on their number and said you need to go back to the drawing board. It took them 2 years to redo their traffic projections, and here's what they dropped it down to. When we got involved with I-26 was right around this time period. And while we were working with DOT, they jacked the numbers back up to here. So as designers, we were stuck with this conduit width for the highway. And we didn't agree with it, but we also had to maintain our relationship with DOT. Just for fun, I had my summer intern project into the future using the past history. So this is my intern Mari's projection in blue. And here's the actual trip. So my intern Mari is way closer at figuring out the trips than DOT's been. As a North Carolina citizen, as a taxpayer in this state, it's offensive that they would do this in my community, that they would game this to build an overly wide highway that's going to cause a lot of sprawl, period. Go ahead and kiss Madison County goodbye, Mills River. They're going to build a conduit. It's called induced demand, and they knew it back in the 60s. So here's what they dropped the projections down to recently. So note what they did. In the draft, when they were still doing the design work, it was 122,000 trips. When they had to hand in their homework to mom and dad at the federal government, they dropped their trips down to 76,000. Why did you just change things? What is that, 38%? Did we get 38% less highway? So February of this year, I got a text from Sage Turner with this image in it. And I was like, hell no, are they doing this? So here's the flyover over the top of Patton Avenue. My city didn't know about this. This is the city's website. Notice they think it was going to go under Patton Avenue. They made resolutions with it going under Patton Avenue. We made community decisions with it going under Patton Avenue. Here's the approved design with I-26 going under Patton Avenue. This is what went out for the bid. And then the contractor that came in was like, oh yeah, we're going to do this change. So here's the new bridge. To give you an idea of the scale of this is the walk under the bridge right there. It's about the width of Sam's Club. So if y'all ever go to Sam's Club, just imagine that being a bridge that you're walking under. It's that big. So the other thing about the scale of it, so here it is on the map. I just went ahead and traced it in, and let's kind of put it at the same scale as Asheville. This is downtown Asheville on the right. So that bridge is going to be basically from the face of the county building to the tip of Pritchard Park. Imagine a bridge that long. Let that wash over you. The other thing on the east side, I-240 through downtown is how many lanes of moving traffic? 4, right? As soon as it plugs onto the project, it turns to 6 lanes. Somehow when it reaches this bend, it's 8 lanes. By the time it gets to Hillcrest, it's 10 lanes. I asked the DOT engineer, I'm like, are the cars having sex in here somewhere? Or how are they producing so many cars? Again, induce. If you induce me to do this, I will continue to drive. If you make that real estate for me, I will continue to use it. But we all lose the tax base. We all pick up the traffic noise, the pollution. This is, we fought to get the bridge back. The bridge is 4 lanes of moving traffic. You come off the bridge and it goes to 5 lanes here. You cross this one ramp area here, it turns to about 9 lanes. And then over here, it's 8 lanes. Like, where are these cars coming from? Also, what's kind of cool is they actually have the design speed of the lanes for the highway, 60 miles an hour. So I don't know if y'all could read that. The lane width is 12 feet for I-26, design speed 60 miles an hour, right? Y'all got that? So if I design the road at a certain aperture, it's going to let me move a certain speed. For Patton Avenue, this new local road that we're getting, notice the lane width. It's the same 12 feet. Somehow this is supposed to be a walkable, I might ride it on my bicycle. How dangerous is that going to be for anybody on a bike or walking across this road when the cars are going 60 miles an hour? I don't know if you know this, we don't drive to the posted speed. We drive to the design width of that road. For anybody that's driven on 26 out to the airport lately, and you get out by the airport, let me know if you're going 55 miles an hour. And it's like we're all driving like 80 now because it's like wide open. This is how people behave. This is one of the intersections by the Sam's Club gas station. Look at how many lanes across this thing is. It's kind of insane. So to get out of Sam's Club, they're also dropping this kind of weird thing. So rather than just going straight across the road, you have to go left, do this U-turn, and go this way. I mean, it's just full of garbage design like this all over the place. This is the 1 lane coming off the highway to come onto Patton Avenue. And magically we go from 1 lane to 4 lanes, just in that one little move right there. Just it's support the city and the county when they start to argue with DOT. They need that help. And now why this matters. This is on Patton Avenue. These are the taxes per acre of the Bojangles and the gas station. If we allow suburban development to happen, this is what you get. Compare that to urban development, also on Patton Avenue. This is producing $137,000 an acre. That's producing 11. But that stuff, that tall buildings, those don't go next to flyover highways. No one wants to be in an apartment looking into a highway. When they allow that to happen, it damages our ability to get real estate value. Now, I talked to a couple of counselors about this and they're like, well, hey, Joe, but what about Chicago? It's like, well, we just don't have that land value pressure yet to get those high rises where I, as a developer, will build an expensive building with that insulated glass in it. I'm just not going to do it. So we will all live with strip malls next to that highway. The other thing on the north side is you look north. Now, again, we're supposed to know the induced changes. This is looking northward across, let's say, by the cemetery, north of Montford area. What does it say there? Future lanes. Why are you building stuff that we don't need? By the way, the law says you're only supposed to build to the purpose and need of the project. Nowhere in the purpose and need of the project does it say we're going to go ahead and widen through Madison County. Yet they're building it in our community right now, or they're designing to. So don't give me this BS that you want to make it cheaper when you're throwing in extra lanes, when you're doing all of this other gymnastics that we don't need. Do y'all follow me? And then this is just looking just right over here, actually. So this is the road that you came in on, Campus Drive. So the highway is 4 lanes northward there. Once you cross that, it turns into 5 lanes. Okay, fine, you need to have an extra lane for a merge or something down there. But when you slide it on down, notice how it turns into, oops. This is at the start of Montford. Now we're up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lanes. You get here, it goes into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 lanes. You come down here, it gets wider. I mean, it just keeps going. I'll forward you all the plans of these, and it's kind of insane. The city adopted a resolution in 2016 that said they only want 4 lanes of moving traffic across the river. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across the river right there. Everything that we ask for, they push the limits on. They don't follow our requests. So when this flyover thing happened, I looked up the law. This is the ATC law. And you can see here that you have to provide an equal to or better solution. So I asked the engineer, I'm like, how is your design equal to or better than keeping the highway in a trench? And he goes, well, it's less expensive. And I said, well, you haven't given us the numbers on that. I've never seen that. B, the NEPA law isn't about building it cheaper. It's about our community impacts, right? By the way, this is what they said, why it's better aesthetically. And I'm not making this up. You can pull the documents. So there it is, flying through space. Now notice there's no signs above the highway. There's no street lights above the highway. They're not giving us that information. But what they said, the reason why this is better, and seriously, I'm not making this up. They're going to let us pick the paint color of the beam. The columns right here are going to be square instead of round. There we go. We got an architect that agrees that that's awesome. But here's the kicker, folks. I mean, seriously, we are so lucky. At the end of that beam down there, they're going to have a little City Hall medallion. Isn't that awesome? So rather than it being suppressed in a trench and us not seeing it, this is better. Also, just for fun, Andrew spent a whopping, 2 minutes and pulled this document. This is a DOT document, at grade highway sound, elevated sound, trenched sound at 50 feet away from the highway, 150, 250. Trenched highway is way superior on how quiet it is compared to elevated in all three categories. The sound will blast horizontally. That's what happens. So what they're doing is they're basically dumping in our community and they're just telling us to eat it. Also, it says that does not conflict with criteria of agreed upon environmental decision-making process. So would you consider our meetings and our press release an agreement? I do. Why would we go through this? Do architects just want to take all their extra time and nights and weekends to just have these meetings just for no apparent reason? By the way, Derek's name is on it. Also, you have to be compliant with federal state permitting. Why would we now go through a NEPA process this summer if it was compliant? Remember what NEPA says. We're supposed to know all the damage and destruction before a decision is made. How did they make a decision and now they're going to go through the damage process? That's like me coming into your house and wrecking your living room, but I'm required to tell you how I'm going to wreck it, but I tell you after I wreck it. So the other thing, it goes against comp plans. This is our city's comprehensive plans. When you blow up into the West Asheville area, here's the highway. This is the path that it's going to take. Notice all this blue stuff around here. Our future land use plan is calling for growing up a density that you would find on West Asheville and Haywood Street, right? So you all see it with your eyes. You see that blue stuff. When you put the highway in space, you're going to blast a sound effect in there, which is going to cause economic impact in our community. Their decision is going to harm our community. This is a really nerdy model that Andrew made, showing you the potency of West Asheville versus all of the stuff in the north side or the Patton Avenue sprawl. The reason why we need to grow our community up, we need that density to get our revenues up, and it also adds more benefit to our community. Here's the blast zone going through that area. So to recap, I made this joke at City Council, and I used AI to kind of come up with this. I asked the computer, I was like, make me a couch with a toilet in it. What's going on is, I don't mean to be professionally disrespectful, but it's sort of like, I'm trained as an architect. You wouldn't let your plumber design your house, right? If your plumber designed your house, your plumber would plumb the couch and say, okay, you don't need a bathroom. That's extra expense. We don't need to waste extra money with that. You'd have to buy a whole nother door. Come on. That's efficient from a plumbing perspective. But what we need to see is, what's the social cost of that? How many friends am I going to lose because I've got a toilet couch, right? What's going to be the smell of my living room? That's an environmental effect, right? Am I going to need to Scotch guard that couch? Probably. And then what's the cost of resale of my house? Because not everybody's going to want a toilet couch. These are the effects that we need to see that they're not giving us, because we just hear from the plumber, it's easier. Sure. I challenge you all, is this acceptable for our community? So just to close, I pulled your mission statement at the national level: to explore and enjoy and protect the wild places of the earth. Cool, all about it. Ian McCart would say, protect nature, stay out of it. Find out where the earth has already wasted its real estate or doesn't need itself for its own biology and build there, but stay out of the rest of it. He was very clear about that. Practice and promote the responsible use of this Earth's ecosystems and resources. We have one planet. That's why he was saying that. That's why there is a planet on the back of the book. This is it, folks. Every square inch of that Earth is sacred. We shouldn't waste real estate with a Bojangles. You know, although it's all right, food, but it's wasting that real estate. We need to educate and enlist humanity to protect and restore the quality of the natural and human environment and use all lawful means to carry out these objectives. Frankly, I think we need to sue them now. I'm at that point where we've done everything we could for 20 years. We shouldn't have to have more charrettes and conversations. They're not following the law. By the way, your objectives, which aren't as aspirational, but they're still important. Safeguard the public lands, national forests, and wilderness, advocate for solar and wind power and replace dirty coal-fired plants and power plants, ensure clean air and water for all citizens, reduce and eliminate single-use plastics, and build resiliency in the face of rising sea levels. These are great. We need to kick it up a notch. How do we make places for our community? What is our vision? How do we grow in a way that is more livable for our community rather than allow this to happen around us? And actually, Ian was very, very supportive of Audubon, Sierra Club, NRDC. The roots of the Sierra Club are in science. It's in data. Y'all became great lobbyists, which is awesome. That's where the power is. But we have to go back to the facts and the data to make this stuff happen. It's just comical that our decisions are meaningless to DOT. Why do they just not follow the rules? So activism needs results. We can't just get out and fight things. We need to have solutions. We put a solution forward at the design center. These are all the resolutions that the city's adopted. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the city has done this time and time again, and DOT ignores these. We need to support our elected officials. They just released this new joint letter, the city and the county, and we need to be there for them. This is not easy for them. They take a lot of BS from people out in the county. They're just like, get her done. It's like, okay, you're just going to let them destroy our living room. What the crazy thing is it loses county taxes on top of it. So if we have plans, we need to follow them. We need to stand up for these plans and say, don't trash our downtown and our downtown area. And if you just fight things, if you just fight development, you're allowing other development to happen whether you like it or not, unless we build a wall around the county and keep people out of here. So when you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. Where are our 3 Black Mountains? And then the sprawl pattern's incentivized, period. We've got all the data to prove it. It goes back to the 70s, actually goes back to the 60s. So I would just encourage you, put a vision forward, help support a vision to growth. And we need to have something better than toilet couch. So thanks for your time. Oh, also, I just want a couple of books I'd recommend in a group, Strong Towns, Chuck Marone. We do a lot of work with them. We're actually speaking at their conference next week. His second book was called Confessions of a Recovering Engineer. Highly recommend it. It's the culture of how engineers behave. They honestly don't know that they're screwing up. So just be mindful of that. They're just trained a certain way. And thanks for letting me show some math.
Okay, we got a couple of folks with microphones. So if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll bring you a microphone. Please wait for the microphone because people online can't hear you otherwise.
And if you don't speak into the microphone, I'll repeat your question.
Yep, got two hands
Sure.
up, all right.
Yeah.
There we go. I think one back in the back.
So the argument you make about tax value is very persuasive. What I'm not seeing as part of the calculation is when city centers become very valuable, not that many people can afford to be in them.
Mhm.
And so there's an economic cost for folks who are at the more vulnerable end of the spectrum. How do you factor those considerations into your description of where investment needs to happen and how it creates broad benefits?
Yeah, it depends. That's a good question. I used to get that early on with like, but hey, Joe, Walmart's cheaper for us. And I'm like, well, that's true. You can get your toilet paper 10 cents a roll cheaper. But are you aware that you pay more in police services than they pay in property taxes? Once a Walmart opens up, you're effectively financially upside down with them because that doesn't even get into the cost of that street light, the cost of the car accidents that happen at that intersection, all of that. So if we're going to run the numbers on it, what are the trade-offs? What I would argue is if you think of Asheville just in my time, there were parts of downtown that were the cheap seats because we had a lot of supply of buildings. And that made it the ability to have some inexpensive and some more expensive. We always had higher end stuff. It was mostly usually down at Biltmore Village back in the day, and maybe like John Cram stuff on Biltmore. But as downtown started becoming a tourism product, because it's rare, there aren't a lot of cities on this planet that are walkable, that have the architecture and everything else that we have. It priced out a lot of stuff in the downtown. But that also opened up West Asheville. West Asheville became what used to be Lexington Avenue for us. So it's do we have enough supply so that it's not so rare that it becomes a hot commodity and people price their way out? There has to be some economic flow to it. The other thing about the all that land and all those buildings, frankly, what I think that needs to be is a public wealth fund that we put all of that land because it was taken from the African American community. We should use that revenue of those buildings to pay into the reparations fund. And just, I think that's how we should approach the federal government and say, look, we asked them 15 years ago, could we use this for public purposes? And they said, what, like a park? Sure. And we're like, no, could we put buildings on it? But could the buildings be artist incubators, affordable housing, business startup, all sorts of things that we can't have in the marketplace? The market's not going to produce that. If I can build $1 million house and sell it, why would I build $1 million house and sell it for 500,000? So that's just the economic calculus of how that private sector works. They're not evil. That's how they pay their rent. But if we have to step in to subsidize something, let's do it with intention and let's build that wealth fund and let that money go to reparations and helping the community. That's an easy way to keep, because right now it's all free land. We just have to ask for it. Does that make sense? I don't know if I directly answered your question, but it's well, yeah, I mean, there's like, yeah, walkable neighborhoods, or if you don't have to, like I do have a car, but I put maybe 2,000 miles on it a year. So the cost of owning a car is about $5,000 a household per year. That savings I get of $5,000 affords me the ability to buy a more expensive mortgage, right? Because I can transfer my transportation cost into my housing cost. So even though the housing is stupidly expensive here in Asheville, it's expensive because it's rare to find those walkable places and that architecture that we like. So let's just build more of it.
Got a question in the back?
Joe, good evening, neighbor.
Hey, Richard.
What I'd like to do, if I could, not a question, but if I could share a little bit of history of the I-26 project. In 1987, a group community leaders that I staffed the effort from Western Carolina University to Asheville to Buncombe County and all. And we started talking about the same idea, how do we make these things happen? You have been sharing and preaching to, unfortunately, the choir for a long time, because what you're saying makes so much sense. We wonder why it hasn't happened. I would say, just one little perspective, in 1987, when we started, there was a Republican governor. Now, excuse me, politics back then, we always had Democrats everywhere. Asheville has a history of its politics. So in about 1990, the former governor, Jim Hunt, came to Asheville for a meeting at the old Asheville Chamber of Commerce, which is now currently a hotel. And he came and said, gentlemen or boys or whatever was appropriate at the time, if I'm reelected, I-26 is my #1 project. He, of course, was the head of DOT then. So we could go on, I could go on and on about this, but just to say, one of the reasons the city has heard this, and you talk to them individually over all the years, They want what you know and you've been sharing makes the most sense. But unfortunately, the politics, in my perspective, is not the same. We don't have the power here to influence like we did to get I-26 in the beginning. Thank you. I mean, what you've done over the years, why has the city not embraced this more and somewhat give you more trouble than you do not deserve?
Well, unfortunately, I think I look for the trouble. So it is on me with that I tend to not mix, dance around things. I tend to be very direct, but I also come with data and evidence and experience. I mean, again, this is community work for me. This is what I'll do until you put me in the ground. I'm going to fight for and argue for our community and community design. I happen to get paid for it in other places. So it's my sport. Some people play soccer. I do nerdy stuff with policy. So
Embrace this.
I have no idea. Talk to the folks that you all champion on the slate for elections. Hold them accountable. Ask them. It's like you all mobilize quite well to lobby and put a slate of candidates forward. Are they meeting your ends? Are you getting the results that you lobbied for when you supported their election, when you had people canvass? You're very, very good with that. So are the people that you're putting into the seats, are they doing what's needed in our community to make action happen? And I think that's a question for you all to have a conversation about. I don't want to just turn it, but it's like all I can do is produce information and tell a story about it.
Question up front. We have a microphone.
We got Susan over here.
Susan over here. Oh, we have a second microphone. Oh, here we go.
She's right here.
So I have a really naive question
Another troublemaker.
with a smile. I don't understand this thing about the bridge going over or under, and it will really affect the river. And I never heard that when we went to all these meetings and everything. I don't remember this discussion of I-26 flying over Patton Avenue. Did I miss all that?
Yes, because
That's the big question, that you don't like that it's flying over Patton Avenue. But if it goes under Patton Avenue, it affects what's under there.
It's still
Unless you're going to raise Patton Avenue.
no,
So am I confused?
it's going to have an impact. You can't build a highway and not impact this planet. You're putting concrete on the ground, right? But it's going to, the idea was, let's see here. Oops. No, I'm not going to do that. The idea was, oops. The idea was it's already down in a trench. Just keep on sending it up through the golf course, right? So it'd go through Jackson Boots and just keep on going. And then it would pop out and go across the river. So it would be suppressed down in there. Isn't going to be more impervious surface? Certainly. Well, it's going to happen regardless. We need to have that connection. When they pushed to go over, that was in meetings that we were having in 2008. You don't remember that because it wasn't public, and we killed it because it was such a stupid idea. Susan Fisher, we had Lindo Tippett come in. He was the chair of the DOT. I remember Susan pointing at him and saying, "You're going to work with our community." And he said, and I quote, "Well, I hear you. I know we don't have the best reputation in working with communities, but you have my word." And so we had that political strength to keep on going. And it wasn't me. It was like Alan McGuinn, Bruce Emery, Stephanie Pankowitz. There was a bunch of designers that met with DOT almost on a weekly basis to talk with them about why it's bad to send it through space. And so none of that, the reason why it never made it to the public is because we killed it before the EIS process happened. We just said there's no way in hell our community would support this. Why would we ask for all this land back and then put an aircraft carrier of asphalt over it? That's dumb.
When I first got here, I got here in 75. So Norma Price and Mary Lloyd Frank were on city council, and they voted for I-26 to come through town because they didn't want sprawl
Yeah.
out through Leicester, which might have been legitimate, but it could, you know, they could have connected to 40 out there, but that's water over the dam.
Yeah, when we got involved, we just,
Decisions by a few people quickly make a big difference.
well, here's the thing. The city council in December of 99 passed a resolution to have this project built by 2002. And when that resolution happened, Roger Duro, Julian Price, there was like a handful of people wrote letters to the city council and like, what are you doing making a decision without information? And they're the ones, Betty Lawrence, they're the ones whose shoulders we stand on. There are people in this community that stepped up, wrote some emails. Roger's email, it's actually in the documents. It's kind of nasty. But he was going to lose Earth Fair. They were going to plow it right through Earth Fair. And he found out the night of the resolution. So there's always been controversy with this project. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but we have to keep on standing up and you have to support our local officials in doing this. I would say also talk to Billy Clark. If you all know Billy Clark, he's our appointed representative on top of DOT and he's an environmental attorney. Share this stuff with him. I've already shared it with him. Talk to Holly Jones. She's works with the governor. These are all folks in our community.
Okay, we got a couple of questions in the back. I'm going to read one from online while the mics are going back there. This is from Jeff. Could you elaborate on the advantage of a polycentric city in comparison to a city with a single center with density that tapers off as you move outward?
Yeah, so the idea of a polycentric city, if anybody's been to Portland, Oregon, Portland, Oregon is a great example of a polycentric city where there is a main downtown, but if you get out into the neighborhoods, they have their own downtowns. Asheville kind of has that with West Asheville. When I lived in West Asheville, we used to joke about how rare it was for us to go across the river to be in the city. It's like it's got all of the needs for that neighborhood environment. Really, if Asheville should become more polycentric, and the master plan calls for this. You want to think up Merriman? We should have the equivalent of a walkable street on Merriman for the neighborhoods and the density. The county should be thinking of polycentrism as well. That kind of shag carpet of growth out in the in Leicester really has all the ingredients of making a city. It's got commercial, it's got retail, office, it's got residential. It's just disaggregated. Think of it this way. When I make a pizza, I'm Italian, I'm going to use food analogies. When I make a pizza, I have ingredients. I have dough, sauce, cheese, pepperoni. When you make a city, you have ingredients. You have housing, commercial, residential, public buildings, civic buildings, parks. You don't take those ingredients and separate them, so I have to use a car to kind of get between them, nor would you separate the pizza ingredients. They have to be mixed. Does that make sense? So I think when we think polycentricism, we have to think about those areas. You're not going to be West Asheville out in Candler tomorrow, but you have to plan for that ability for it to grow. You have to have the bones there for the meat to get on it. But polycentrism is basically one of the best ways to make cities grow is you take that, and back to Nina's point, you take that pressure off one environment to do everything and you disaggregate it into many different places. So, parts of downtown are more touristy than other parts. Well, the same will be true for the city.
Okay, those folks in the back, there were two hands a while ago. If you raise those, we'll get you mics.
Hi, thanks for your presentation, really illuminating. And I'm taking notes on, things like what you can do, support your city council, talk to Billy Clark. And I'm like, give me some clear, if you do one thing when you go home, do this, or here are 3 things, or here's the next meeting of X. How could we take this motivation and channel it? What would be your a concrete suggestion for that?
We currently have an aesthetics committee that could use more design talent. So for any landscape architects, urban designers, anybody that's been trained to design, you could give some time on that committee to try to get better design applied to this project, to have witnesses involved in this to try to get better, fix it a little bit. For elected officials, we should have a legal opinion from an attorney on whether or not the way that they handled the ATC process was legal. And that's a yes or no question. We shouldn't listen to Nathan Moneyham, who's an engineer, who's been showing up at all these council meetings telling us that they followed all the legal process. He's not qualified to say that, nor am I qualified to do landscape architecture. I can tell you about trees, but I'm not qualified, you know? And I think that's one of the things that's errant in the process is we haven't had an adult conversation with real facts. We've allowed this system to be presentations without data. And I think if there's one thing I would focus on is the ATC laws and that we're not following them. It's basically the design build contract. I can give you, it's all in the show. I'll give it to you. Also from stepping out of the I-26 project at a bigger level, support the county in having regional planning in a better process. Encourage, there are folks in Swananoa that want to incorporate. Why not? It's like, how could Swananoa develop its own version of downtown Weaverville or Black Mountain or something like that? It needs that support. What could we do as a community to support that happening? Could that be some tax increment financing or something like that? For the tax process, it is totally unacceptable that we don't tax Airbnbs as commercial product. They're hotel rooms. Why are we taxing them like houses? I mean, there's lots of things we could do. So it's just being literate about the finances of our community and understanding where the leaks are. But this is all stuff that I can give you lots of data on.
You got a question on the back on the right?
Hey there.
From my right?
Thanks for the presentation. It's illuminating. Basically, I'm wondering, where's the pressure point? Who's the decision maker? Is it these unelected bureaucrats that are, shoving this plan down our throat and the contractor is saying it's too expensive?
Well, right now, the contractor's on the hook. So the way that the contract was let out is they said, we're doing this special design build process. You can come up with creative stuff, but you, contractor, have to follow the law. And you also have to meet this deadline in the contract. So as far as I'm concerned, the contractor put their neck in the guillotine and made the decision. Why our state didn't step up and say, yeah, that's not acceptable. We already went through this argument with this community. And I don't know if that, because Derek Weaver, who was the NCDOT person that we worked with, maybe he wasn't in the conversation. It's just basically a bureaucratic gaffe. But at the end of the day, it's on the contractor. So it's like, let's get the contractor in here and ask that contractor why he's not looking at our laws and our policies. We haven't seen the contractor. We've only seen the DOT officials. So it's like, this is the way it works. We had to hold DOT accountable when they told us a double-decker bridge wouldn't work. There was this painful meeting in 2007 at City Council where Brownie held them accountable. And they said, oh, no, a double-decker bridge is going to have a curvature problem. And Brownie said in the microphone, so as a licensed professional engineer, you can't solve a curvature problem? 5 engineers were swallowing their tongue in that meeting. And that's when the city and the county gave us $80,000 to hire an engineer so that we could keep moving forward. So our city and county has always stepped up. But yeah, let's bring the contractor in.
And kind of as a side note, how are you thinking about like public transportation in this I-26 whatever mess?
Well, ideally, we want to have that as a transportation spine. I don't know if you saw the before and afters. We had a mass transit trolley going down across the bridge. The city's plans call for that spine to grow up along Patton Avenue. So we have in our plans for our city that this is going to grow up. It's going to change. It's not going to be strip malls with surface parking lots. But think of it this way. You need to have the veins that deliver the transportation has to match the meat that goes on it. So we need to have, it's got to be both. The design of the street has to facilitate walkability. You're not going to get walkability until the street changes. No one's going to want to walk. I mean, there's a sidewalk on Patton Avenue. Go walk it. Susan's done a great job putting a bunch of trees on it, but it's like a death trap because it's not designed well. It's designed for cars. So I think our city and our county, all the cities around in the county are going to have the same conversation. Go to Weaverville. You've got a great little walkable downtown, and literally like a quarter mile, half mile away, it turns into junk on the way to the highway. It's like we're undermining our own wealth and walkability. And I just, if y'all think I'm just like some crazy money guy about all of this, there's a great book called Happy City that talks about our human health and our serotonin effects with walkability. There's science that actually proves that a walkable community is better for us civically, socially, and just from a standpoint of human health. So we just have to start advocating for that, the human environment. Sir?
Steve?
Joe, thanks for your, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks for your presentation and your reference to McCarg. I heard him speak in college and I went to work for one of his disciples later. Anyway, in the bigger picture, assuming we move in a sensible way, hopefully in the future in the city and county here, what do you think the best way is to deal with our green space in the future? As McCarg might say, nature basically gives us a plan, at least a rough plan.
Yeah.
How to deal with resilient places versus not so resilient places. Riparian areas seem to be key to me in connecting green spaces. They make a lot of economic sense. Flood, we're a flood prone city. Seems like we need a stronger approach to that in the future, how we connect our green space as the city gets denser.
Yeah. There was you were here for the 2004 flood, right? So after that, there was a Blue Ribbon Committee that got together and met. They released a report in 2007, and they advocated for going upriver and buying up land and leaving it nature. So it'd be a sponge when the next storm hits. And they said, and this is a quote out of the presentation, 60 people died in this flood. The next one's going to be worse. We had a chance in 2007 to take that seriously. Now, in defense of the county didn't even have zoning back then. So, it's like we have matured. We can do so much more. We could do transference of development rights where we go out into the flood areas, the estuaries, the sensitive land that Mother Nature wants as its sponge, and buy away those property rights from folks or transfer them to other areas where they can accept density. That's called a transference of development rights program. Florida does it. There's lots of places that do that. But we need to enable that. We need to support our elected officials. We've got Drew in the back here. That would be something the county could consider. But the county would need the cooperation of the municipalities around to accept the density. So Asheville would need to be a little bit more responsible about allowing areas to grow up. We all got to work together. We're not only on this planet together, we're in this county together. It's not Asheville versus Weaverville or whatever. We're all Buncombe County residents.
Joe, my question is time frame. Who's making the decisions and what are the next steps?
I honestly don't know about the highway. I do know that they're doing this EIS work over the summer. They're behaving like this is a done deal and we're just keeping moving ahead. We're keeping on moving ahead. And frankly, I think we need to get that big old hook and kind of like hook them off the stage for a second and say, we were serious about this. We don't want you just keep on moving ahead. What's that? Well, they already have the money. So the state has already moved the money to pay for it. Here's the best. I don't think there's a Machiavellian kind of nefarious plot here. The contractor actually wrote in their application that they're already here doing I-26 by the airport. It's cheaper and easier for them to just move that stuff over here and finish I support that. That seems logical. You've got all that heavy equipment, just slide it over here. But somewhere in there, it was easier for them to just throw the highway over the top of Patton Avenue. So it was a trade-off they made. It was easier for them to not do X and they did Y. They didn't consider all the impacts because they just don't think like that. They plumbed the couch. And I think I don't think it's evil. I think it made simple sense for them.
Okay, we have time for maybe one more question.
Good. Richard, just go ahead. I'll repeat it.
From what I've read in the Asheville Citizen Times and AVL Watchdog, I believe what happened, the project was bid. And then there was a certain price and DOT said, that's too much. You're going to have to reduce the price. And so this is the reduce the price project that they came back with. I say extortion because when people started suggesting, as we're here tonight, how do you stop it? What was the comment? Do you want to lose the project?
Yeah.
Or do you want to push it back to when we're all great-great-grandparents? And so if we use the term extortion and what really happened, if we're really going to pull the curtain back, that's what happened in city council. What? They got cold feet because they were going to tell everybody, oh, we'll get the bypass in about 35 or something. Anyway, that's my perspective of how I interpret it. Is that wrong?
I'm not going to disagree. Isn't this fun?
Well, one last question. Who do we appeal to, Joe? Who has the decision-making power?
Well, right now we have the city and the county did a joint letter. So the city and the county are together again. And it's sort of like DOT is on notice. I don't know. I mean, Drew could probably answer more than I could about what the next steps are politically. But I think that the elected officials just need your support. And maybe these questions go to them is what is the next steps? How can we support you? What are the things that need to happen? But it's all I can tell you that it's what we've got is not right. So
Just a couple of comments. One is Sierra Club did send a letter to both the county commission and city council asking them to oppose what was happening, and they did. They do it. So one of the things you can do is reach out to your county commissioners and city council and thank them for the letter they submitted and encouraging them to fight this because we're going to live with it for 50 years. If it's a delay somewhat, so be it. But we're going to live with this. A couple other things just to some of the other topics he talked about. Infill development is something Sierra Club supports strongly. We were at city council a few weeks ago or a month or so ago when they passed some zoning changes to create higher density development along corridors, cluster housing, flag lots, and things like that. So there's always, anytime we talk about infill development, it's a great idea, but just not in my neighborhood.
yeah.
We need people to step up and tell city council, we support you in making some of these tougher decisions and let them know that. And the county, we need to let them know that we support more zoning and more smarter growth plans. And I know there's vocal people out in the county that don't want that to happen, but we need to step up and say, we do. The majority of people in this county want smart growth and planned growth. So supporting our elected officials and giving them the courage to make some of these tougher decisions is important. And that's something we as Sierra Club are really pushing. Judy, turn it back over to you.
And I want to thank all of you guys. I want to thank Joe. This was very eye-opening. And you are sending your show for us to post that you can on our website. I want to invite you to our picnic, July 19th. And our next program here will be the first Wednesday in August, and it will be on invasives. You know that Helene left us all kinds of problems. Well, one of the problems is the invasives coming in. So please come to that program. Thank you, guys. You're great.
Hi.
Good to see you. Now you showed all those pictures of the